Here we are. Here we are. Another episode, long time in the making. Update on true crime and history and conspiracy podcasts that we recommend. Here tonight, Lisa Marks. Say hi.
Hi. How are you?
And Jennifer Goller.
Hi.
Right. So they from the What I Had Heard Was podcasts, and we just thought, yeah, we could totally do we had so many different options. Twitter's been great at posting collaborations and promoting other shows, and we're just like, yeah, no, we're gonna have you on, and what we're gonna figure out is just some cool topic that wouldn't be too divisive, just something that everyone could kind of relate to. And since you guys, explore conspiracies and I do some social political topics on occasion, I just figured, yeah. I just like, yeah, we can totally do an update on true crime podcasts we've kind of been following lately.
Have you been listening to more or less podcasts than you typically listen to, or do you think it's about the same?
I would say actually even more.
Really?
I any of them that got too snobby or weren't regularly updating for like a year and a half, I just dropped. I said I'm not following. And then there were other ones that again had too many hiatuses, but I've discovered so many through Wondery. That's another true crime network, and just so many other ones. I got a chance to speak to Lindsey Graham, who's done stuff like American Scandal and a bunch of other ones, and that was very enlightening. Just how I was kind of picking his brain. He didn't really have much to give. He's like, I hired a producer who hired these other local great theater talents to bring these people to life.
Right.
I was just a scripter figuring out how to promote it. But it is interesting how there was a great back in 2022. There was a bunch of these podcasts, some of which we'll mention. They brought up how they were hosting a panel at True Crime Con in Dallas, and they gave some great helpful tips on, if there's a current case, let it ride for a while. Don't try to unintentionally influence the jury. It could be a very crucial case. Always try to reach out to all sides of the argument. The media is not always going to get it right, as we know. And be very, very careful. Give as many trigger warnings as you can, because some people are too dumb to read the fine print. Hey, graphic description of actual incident that happened.
Right.
We're not doing this to be gratuitous, and don't over dramatize. You will piss someone off every time. It'll sound phony to the viewer, and it'll piss off the victim's family because they're like, that's not how my jury, sounded.
Well, the question is how graphic is necessary. Like how much information do we how much information do consumers really need?
Right. Don't make it sound like an SVU or Criminal Minds episode. Make it sound real enough, but not, like you say, to where it feels like an exploitation film or something just over the top. It's and what but you don't have to add any extra thing. Like, I thought they got hit with this object. Well, we're not sure.
Well, the entitlement to knowledge bothers me.
Yes.
The feelings of entitlement. I
feel like I know enough. I went on Wikipedia or a real life serial killer site. I'm like, well, did you go to another few researcher sites that study these cases?
But even if you did, they're real people. They're real people who lived real lives, who have real families who are affected by these crimes.
Mm-hmm.
So we considered for this season that we're in right now, we were going to do serial killers, like the most prolific serial killers, the ones that are the most well known. But we decided in the end not to do that. And it's simply because, you mention the victims? If you do mention victims, what about the victims' families?
Right.
It's a difficult subject, to do, and to try not to offend anyone, or and these poor families, their loved ones, the information that's out there, it has to be so difficult. You hear constantly everything that happened to your loved one, and it's got to be hard. And to avoid it is impossible. It's on every podcast, every TV show. It's difficult, So and how do you do it without offending someone, or bringing back memories, or it's difficult.
Well, and these shows are trying to one up each other.
Yes,
we're going to get even more graphic, and we're going to share even more information that is really irresponsible, to be honest.
It really is, because people are dumb and they like to think they got their research from watching a movie. It's like, no, your guess is as good as theirs.
I think that the worst place to get information is from any of these movies that aren't a documentary. Look at how many movies, but go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but keep in mind that even the documentaries are biased by whoever's making them.
True.
It's not like it was 30 years ago, which I'm sure there still was some of that, but those seem to be more factual based. Now, documentary.
I mean, CSI never got it right. They were always like, oh, we're going to abandon science and be all comic bookish. But you see some of their ideals and they'll throw bullshit like, oh, we're the cops, we're your friends. And then they'll mix in other stuff like, we'll solve it in 24 hours. It's like, no. More like 3 months. And that's not including going to trial.
Well, one of the podcasts, the true crime podcasts that I have listened to religiously, not so much lately. I actually stopped listening to podcasts for about a year now. And I'd hate to talk about a commercialized podcast for true crime, but in my mind, one of the best ones is My Favorite Murder.
My Favorite Murder.
And it's a comedy. Yeah, it's a comedy true crime podcast.
Won a Shorty Award for Best Podcast. Okay, shoot.
Yeah, it's very, very popular, and they make big money off of it. And they do it on stage and in front of an audience, and somehow they make you laugh while also talking about all of these cases. But they do have tons of disclosures saying, how they realize that they're joking and laughing about something that just completely isn't funny. But in the end, you learn a lot about these cases, and they are being factual and they are following what really truly happened. But they're both comedians, and they're making you laugh the whole time. But somehow it's done really tastefully. So
I guess I got a similar one that is definitely, it's on iHeart, so they're definitely making some kind of money. Have you guys ever followed Behind the Bastards?
No.
Okay, so that was another one, and they do they're stating stuff out loud, and they're having to just laugh at just all these real life, just fascists, Nazis, dictators, other everyday celebrities who got away with all kinds of crimes, and they're just like, do you hear these people? So, but it's kind of a similar thing. It's like, it's not funny at all, but yet sometimes they're just trying to get into their head and even make sense of this awful person who has, the more you read about it, it's like, yeah, they're living on a totally different planet, and this makes no sense at all. But they do find a way to kind of ease the pain, and then at the end of the day, be like, yeah, we talked about some real bastards.
You could say that the fascination with true crime is that it kind of makes you more aware of what can happen to you, and what situations to try to attempt not to put. I mean, obviously, it happens even in the best case scenario, and there's nothing you can do about it. But it does kind of make you more aware of what to do, what not to do, what to watch out for, what to look for. And, it just makes you more aware of what actually literally could happen to you, and without you realizing you're in danger, so.
I heard that people like it because it takes you very close to something dangerous, but you're still in a safe place. So you get to find out how awful things could be. And the storytelling behind the podcast or whatever.
That's what's key. Yeah.
It creates it for you. And so you're getting something and you say, this is true. Like this actually happened, which makes it significantly more scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it just shows you I think that's why we're getting comfortable getting back into audio dramas and remembering how much we love the radio typically on a good day is like when you have someone who is using this format and not abusing it, just actually using it to create a bigger picture. And, not everyone's meant for it. Some of the shows I had to stop listening to because I'll get to some of the worst ones in a bit. It's just very, I mean, when the right kind of people can make this compelling, even though you're probably not going to get a good happy ending. But I mean, it's not for everybody. There are some where they got way too many ads or they have too many roundtables that are kind of redundant when it's just keeping us from. It just kind of adds to more speculation. So I like it when it's just kind of a got it and done, and if it's an unhappy ending, it still an active scene, but I like when they add extra detail, like the community is still looking for this person, but it's not neither the victim or the killer is a person of interest by the cops or feds. Just
right.
Feed it to us. We can handle the truth.
I really like true crime bullshit.
Oh, like in terms of describing what?
No, it's the name of a show.
Oh, okay.
It's like to look that one up though.
Israeli Keys.
Israel Keys. Wow. Yeah, he was a serial killer, and they don't know a whole lot about him because he killed himself. But it's really interesting.
Wow. Very
Isn't
wild.
that interesting? And I hate to say this, and I'm going to put this in the lightest way possible, but if you're a serial killer and you truly don't want anyone to know your secrets, I mean, and you're going to kill yourself, and it's like, fuck, you die with all of your secrets, and they may never find out what, and that just truly shows just how evil you are in the end. It's just like, I'm going to die, and I'm not going to reveal some of my victims, what I did, why I did it. I'm going to die with all the answers. And you know what I mean? It's just the true coward.
How many of the people who are out there killing multiple people are concerned about their family's feelings? You know what I mean? How many care about putting that to rest or getting justice for any of it? Like, they don't care. That's not a concern for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think wrapping it up is the hardest part. How do you tell people, hey, we haven't found anything new, or we've come closer, we've been following the case more closely, but we still got plenty of holes in this narrative. And we don't have any good way to end this, so we'll just end this. I do dig it when they actually have some kind of professor or some other person who studied this case for quite a while.
What do you guys think about all the internet sleuths, like the ones that just go on these like rabbit holes of trying to, and a lot of times they help solve these crimes. They live by it, and they
I haven't followed any of these. Are they just like internet radio, or are they an actual like
no
vlog?
they take
I didn't know.
They find information that no one's found, that no one's realized. They examine all the news stories and all of the information, and they actually help solve. Some of them help solve these crimes. by just basically being extremely nosy and just doing tons and tons and tons of research.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they notice things no one noticed, and
I might need him to look up some dirt on my shady employers. Wow. Very cool. Very cool. So I got a few for you here that you might recognize. No Body, No Crime, I take it you've heard of?
Have I heard of
No,
that?
I haven't heard that.
Okay.
Oh, is that the show?
Yes. I'm
Oh, no, I haven't heard of
some
the
shows
show.
for you. Okay. Total recommend. That's actually where I've heard about the True Crime Con. True Crime Weekly, it's good, but it's a little sidetracked, nervous laughter with the duo sometimes, but recommend. There's the Sinister Sisters. They got some good narratives. Unfortunately, they kind of went on hiatus a while back. Voices for Justice and Disappearances. These are pretty perfectly edited and pretty well researched. Hunting Warhead. This is a one and done audio drama from quite a while back, but it's so visceral, just identifying if someone you know is a pedophile or not. But it just gets into the hacking world and how so many traffickers hide behind that. Crime Junkie, you might have heard of her because
One I know.
She did a guest spot on Conan O'Brien. She's pretty funny. I'm friends with this guy. I Don't Speak German, run by Daniel Harper. He's really good at just figuring out just some of the logic or lack thereof behind some of these incel gunmen, modern day Nazis, and other just MAGA trolls. A few bad apples. She chronicles a lot of crimes committed by actual policemen or people who were imposters, and she'll end it with a good apple, so to speak. My Persian pal, Tara Jabari, has this awesome history one called Who Was She?, which chronicles real life women doing, just awesome things like spying during, earlier century wars and making a difference during like foreign uprisings, just stuff that you listen to and you're like, that should be an actual like spy biopic, So Who Was She? And that's on Spotify. My Favorite Murder. Yes, I added you to the list. That actually made it back on here because I'm reading back. So Last Days of August. This chronicles the mysterious death of a adult film star, like a real life person, and we're still indecisive if the neglect by her shitty producer husband caused this or if there was something else. Because everyone was like, oh, she's bipolar. It's like, yeah, but no one gave her the proper attention. So you can't say it's just her. There was clearly some neglect by so many different parties on this. QAnon Anonymous. This is a lot of tough stuff to go through, but it's worth it. It really... they're even cited by CNN half the time just because they have done a good job of tracking down some very crazy fascists. Variety Confidential is a new one by, the magazine of the same name, and they chronicle the history of the casting couch in the entertainment industry. The New York Times had this audio drama called Rabbit Hole, and it deals with all kinds of other, once again, computer, techno stuff that happened in real life, hackers. The Nefarious Nightmare, I think they were pretty good. Okay, so you know this one. I think they were pretty good with the source list.
We know them.
And not so... sweet. Yeah, I had them on here as well. I mentioned American Scandal. Totally worth it. Like, you'll get all kinds of good stuff. We Descent, Dark Adaptation, The Lady Vanishes, which is a UK one. True Stories with Seth Andrews. He'll keep you in suspense, even if you think you've known about this story before. There's another Wondery program called Suspect. Its current season is Vanished in the Snow. Another one they produce is Chameleon, which has numerous topics each season. It's in its 5th year, and it's by Sony Music and Outdoor Media. But you'll just be blown away by how many of these guys, if they're not serial killers or other awful people, they're also scam artists who have done it so long they believe their own lies. Disgraceland, Badlands podcast, Swindled, which I had a recommendation from other podcast buddies. They're like, this is a very interesting student scandal podcast.
Oh.
Yep. So if you think you've had it bad in college, you might look up how these guys who totally got screwed over by everybody, from professors to other students to financial aid. Every Town podcast, and I'm telling you, you want to talk good editing, this moody soundtrack and these real life creepy cold cases. Oh man, I don't listen to it while you're driving. You'll have to pull over multiple times. The Town Whispers podcast. This had some freaky Foley, and the creator did a spinoff of this called Tiny Terrors. So it's kind of based off real life cold cases. I had another great guy on here called to promote this podcast, Stage Combat. It's a mental health podcast on basically, again, people who've been mistreated in the theater arts scene. And Time Suck with Dan Cummins, Fiasco. This is a short-lived one, but they covered the Bush versus Al Gore election, the AIDS crisis, and a vigilante killer. Gone Cold podcast. They detail Texas true crime. Over My Dead Body by Wondery, I think you'll dig, because it's, long story short, like they're going into better known ones like the Tiger King, Joe versus Carol,
Okay.
as well as interviewing actual people who have, been recreating this or producing the reality show. So there's a little corporate stuff, but Something Was Wrong. This was also recommended by Nefarious Nightmare, and I was so glad I looked it up. I haven't cared for some of their recent stuff, but they do such a good job of just serial liars, people who were everyday kind of people who screwed up so many other people's lives, that I think it's a good lesson to how one person can practically destroy a town at times. Big Mad True Crime, The Buried Sisters, Exposed Cover Up at Columbia University, Red Handed's another one about infamous murderers. Smokescreen is one you'll probably like, because it's another anthology, multi-part, and again, just this is mostly on fake priests. So once again, extra trigger warnings. Cover Up has multi-era scandals, as well as ones about abortion pills being among many people's dark secrets, that they just talk about stuff that people tried to make, unattainable to other people, and yet they had a lot of the same dirty laundry, so to speak. Crooked City. This details a lot of city heists and horse gambling and other political crooks. The Muck podcast. These, again, go into political scandals with a true crime connection. There's True Spies in the Spying Game, which detail all kinds of history and true crime, but they were committed by CIA agents. So take that with a grain of salt. The one I think you're really going to love is Slow Burn and its spinoff Decoder Ring. These were created by the creators of Fiasco and was marketed by, I think, Slate magazine. And they do all kinds of trials, but they do it way more coherently. Like, what was the original Clarence Thomas scandal like, and all stuff like that. The Opportunist chronicles true crimes and conspiracies committed by cults. And
I'd like that.
Yep. So there you go. The Opportunist and The Legend of Tammany Hall. That's a history miniseries that's going on. I'm pals with the Almost Presidents podcast. I think you'll dig them, because you're talking about all the guys who could have made it but didn't. It's president. I got some weaker ones, but I'll let you guys kind of go in and do some other suggestions before I get to it. It's a lot to take in.
I'm sorry about my dog.
I can't hear it.
Can you hear it?
Nope.
No. Okay. Well, I had Nefarious Nightmare. So
Right.
These are some indies.
Yeah.
I also have Crime on the Record. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
I'm gonna look for it now. Crime on the Record.
Also, Yeah, Crime on the Record. And they haven't put anything out in a while, but Over the Fence is a true crime podcast. They're an indie podcast. The last episode that they did was in 2023, unfortunately, but they were very good.
Yes.
And of course, well, a friend of ours, The Jury Room. That's another good one.
The Jury
It's
Room.
a read podcast. Yeah, so he reads. The usually does it by himself and does like a read podcast. I don't know what you call that. Like, what would you call that, Jen?
Narration.
An audio book. I don't know.
A narration. Narration. Yeah.
Kevin's a great guy.
That's good.
Yeah. The Midnight Train. That's another good one. They explore a lot of true crime.
Good.
So those were some of my favorites.
I like serial killers.
Okay.
It's real chill. I mean, it's not super exciting. I didn't come with a whole prep list.
No, it's fine. I didn't know how detailed we were going to be, but I'm always updating the list.
Yes.
But, it does kind of remind you on how hard it is to even bring it to life. But yeah, I'll look up Crime on the Record and Over the Fence for sure. I got some weaker ones that really angered me. Like, they weren't very researched. They were over dramatized, overproduced, and there wasn't really much lingo. Despite loving Behind the Bastards, which has been around for a while, I couldn't get into many of the iHeart ones. They had one called Stuff They Don't Want You to Know and Silence the Radio Murders. And the unevolving narration and big production just became very annoying due to the soundtrack and clickbait type scripting and over dramatized voices. I was just like, this feels like Nikki Swift or, one of those other, scandal sites wrote this as opposed to someone who wanted to detail this better. I tried getting into Forgotten and I kind of did just that. I forgot everything that was on after each episode. It wasn't very enlightening. American Scandal did this other one they produced called Reign of Error. And despite being by the ones behind Suspect and Chameleon, I just didn't. It was very tough to get into. Like, it was one of those, it was like 6 episodes, and after the second episode, I was done. I was just like, it's not holding my interest at all. Owned was another one. And again, it's talking about all kinds of stolen property and everything else, but it was just one of those other ones where, despite really being impressed by Wondery's podcasts, there are some where it's just like, it's just, you can only detail so much theft and pettiness before you just kind of draw a blank. You're like, and what now? And that's all I had that I didn't really feel like cut the mustard. But the iHeart ones were very, very bad, but the rest were just kind of, they were weak. I don't think they were the worst of all time, but I couldn't recommend them fully.
Sometimes I think that the name of the podcast, the title of the podcast, is more interesting than the content. It makes you go to it. You're like, oh, that sounds good.
What is this?
You go and you listen. You're like, what is this? Because the name is like really makes you think you're gonna hear something phenomenal, right? Or something really, interesting. And then you listen to it and you're like, I don't know about that.
What happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you listen to The Dollop?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
The dial-up. Okay.
The Dollop.
The Dollop.
Dollop, like
like a dollop of sour cream.
Yeah. That's a good one. I forgot that it existed.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
I know producer Dick Wolf has produced some true crime podcasts, so he's jumped on that bandwagon. There's a lot of them I want to listen to, but they're not on any take it with you kind of mobile app. They're kind of desktop only.
Oh, okay.
Or some of them are just on Spotify, and you're just like, okay, that takes up so much space on my phone, so I'll listen to it when I get home.
The Dollop is not an indie podcast. It's a very, very popular podcast. Very well done. It's produced. It's so good. It's so good.
All right.
I completely forgot that existed. Now I just saved it on my list because Jen brought it up.
It's
Okay.
a lot of fun.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
It's
Dave
with Dave
Anthony.
Anthony and Gareth Reynolds.
Good.
It's another, that they take things that aren't funny and
Right.
make them funny. So it's just so great.
So that's your bread and butter currently. Just make it something to lighten it.
Yeah. Yeah, but like in a tasteful way. It's really difficult to do. And the ones that do it well, it's amazing, So
Sweet.
how do you make some of these things funny? And they do.
And educate you, but they're doing it both at the same time, and part of the story isn't great. And how do you share information that is really bad with other people without making them unhappy to have heard that information?
But you retain it more when you're when you're interested and you're also laughing at the same time, but you're like, like I'm the type of person, I'm going to laugh at like the most inappropriate things at the most inappropriate places, like a funeral or church. That's just me. So like, why wouldn't I laugh at like true crime or like horrible things that have happened in history? And sometimes the best thing you can do is laugh, because it just makes it hurt less,
the only thing
less
that just
terrifying.
Stops it. Make the pain less painful.
Yes.
Numb the wound. Wow. Yeah, it can be a lot, and I applaud anybody who can just make any of these work, because I'm sure it's not easy. No, these are some good suggestions. I will definitely check them out. We picked each other's brains for quite a while, so let's give a little you time. So Lisa and Jen, so where did you guys get the courage to come up with your own podcast, talk about underreported or other just troublesome stuff that should be talked about more?
So I joined Jen this past year. I joined her podcast. She's been established for about 3 years. She had two prior co-hosts. Yeah, she had two prior co-hosts. The show's different than it was with the other two co-hosts. We're trying to find our footing. I came from another podcast that I did for 2 years, and it was completely different than what we're doing right now. So we're basically just trying to lightheartedly also talk about things that are not
Something
funny in any way, and not so we're trying to our tagline is that we want to educate you about things we know nothing about. So we're also learning while telling you about these things. So right now we're doing death conspiracies about celebrities. So like Marilyn Monroe and Elvis. Yeah. So celebrities that may or may not still be alive and that died in circumstances that are a little sketchy, and the ones that have all these conspiracy theories and what really happened, who said what. So that's what we're doing for this season. Yeah.
Nice. And I applaud anyone who can make it, a priority, because it is so much time and research to where it's like I need extra time to still edit,
Yeah.
Well, Jen's our editor, and sometimes I get the text messages that I'm going to bash my head against the wall. Can you say and a little less?
Just encouraging me.
I say that, and then the very next time we recorded, I kept going,
there are times, not to sound like a serial killer, but there are absolutely times where I just want to strangle past me and say, why, you know what you want to say, why are you giving yourself more work to do?
Yeah. You know how to fix this. Why are you making it so difficult?
And it's just annoying because it's like, I'm sure I've done this quite a bit while we've been recording, but it's like, you know what you want to say. Why are you pausing?
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, I am not I've never taken broadcasting. I'm not educated in that. For all of us to that are indie podcasters to be able to successfully do this kind of well, I'll say kind of well. It's pretty impressive.
Kinda.
Come on, we're basically teaching ourselves by way of practice.
Trial and error.
You don't realize. Yeah.
As long as you're comfortable with yourself, your other crew, and value your time,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's not easy though. I mean, there's so much to it, and I have to do something new every day. Now I got to finally create a website. And it's like, one more thing I don't want to do, but I should do.
Oh, you should have seen us earlier trying to figure out how to get our RSS feed on YouTube, which we don't know why we didn't have a YouTube.
A pain. Yeah. And
yeah, we just sat around all this time going, oh, we should get a YouTube, but we don't know anything about YouTube.
And Google's really bad. I mean, you're really not going to see much of a buck from it, but it is actually really amazing how many people will discover you on YouTube. It's just like they just want something they can sneak in at their work and listen to, even though there's no videos sometimes. And I find it interesting how let's see, I just did it there. Guilty as charged. I just did it again. God damn it. So it's funny because fuck me. It's just funny how that this is a recurring issue. We go through stages every year having to update things, and then it's like, oh, you needed that. But like you say, it's like it would have been good to have you on your link tree on your website and have all this other stuff that was long overdue. But like you say, it's also just so infuriating because it takes up so much time so that you don't have. So I wish the best to anybody who explores this.
It's a free job that we do to entertain.
Yes.
It pays nothing.
It pays nothing, but better
it costs
later.
A little bit.
Well,
it costs you money.
The $300 fee annual. Okay, yeah, that's true. But I've lost track of.
We pay to entertain you.
Yes.
Oh, woohoo!
We pay to entertain you.
But I like you gals' style, and I like how you post it on the social media and promote it. It's not clickbaity. It's very to the point. And these are uncomfortable topics, but someone's got to report them. So I applaud you for that. I just did it again. That's what I do when I'm nervous. So what's funny is how it just you're never really sure how much time you're going to spend just to research per episode. And that goes for any kind of podcast, entertainment, documentary, anything. It's just like, but you'll know when you're there, when you look at all your notes and you're like, I got enough for 5 hours and then go.
So we actually just did the 27 Club, which has a lot more people than you think on that list. So we took the most recognizable celebrities and musicians on the list.
For those who don't know, that is about celebrities who died at said age.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was almost 2 hours, and we were going to do 2 episodes, but in the end, with Jen editing, she realized it's just going to be one very long episode. Unfortunately, but fortunately.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. It was just way more content than we thought would be in one
You
episode.
thought it was going to be like 10 people, and you're like, nope, there's this person, that person.
It wasn't even how many people, because we only had 6 people that we covered, but it got out of hand really quickly, just briefly talking about each of them, because you're like, well, I mean, it makes sense that they died, but also we need to talk about this for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah. We actually could have done a whole episode on a few of them, like Kurt Cobain and Amy Winehouse could have been episodes in themselves.
That could have been a mini-series, yeah.
Yeah.
Who were you most impressed by, where you're like, wow, talk about an invaluable talent?
Jim Morrison, I'm going to say. Yeah.
You think so?
He could have been a whole episode too. Absolutely. There was a lot. So.
Nice. Well, what do you think you'd like to tackle in the future as well?
So we were talking about our next season, and what did we say, Jen, we were going to do? Earlier we were, I forget. We said we were going to do this, and now I don't remember. So we were going to do
at least you didn't
movies.
Say 5,000 times like me. Anyway. So yeah, no, but, movies could be fun. I mean, it'd be awesome if someone explored difficult to work with filmmakers who were kind of borderline psychotic.
Yeah,
no, there was something we were going in between.
There definitely was, and
where there's sociopathic.
Oh, we were talking about paranormal.
Paranormal. That's it. Yeah. So we were going to do paranormal next. And I think there's unlimited content on hauntings, and the paranormal, for sure. So I think that's just, there's just a never ending need to know about the unknown, basically. I just never want to do aliens. I don't want to do it. Right. Please no aliens.
Are you afraid they're going to come?
Oh, I don't know.
In the middle of the night?
You know they're all listening.
They're going to touch your butt, no matter what you do now.
Yeah.
This took a twist. Trigger warning.
Yeah.
Don't sue me.
You'll just have to bleep me out.
No, I don't do that. I believe in freedom of speech. But that's another interesting topic too. How often you'll go on a website and some of this plays into true crime and it's like, wow, this person had no differentiation on the difference between speaking my mind versus being a jerk. Like, do you see what you just typed up? And I feel like gamers played that a lot as well. It's like,
speaking of,
which some of them go into true crime as well. It's like, oh, yeah. You wanted to kill that guy because they kicked your butt at a video game? It's not real.
Oh.
You don't know how this works. And I do get tired of seeing politicians trying to ban stuff that they don't even know how it works, but they cater to all the ignorant parents. Oh, my stupid self brought this game into my kid's world, but I could have looked at the rating and known that was not a good idea. The game didn't kill your kid or make your kid kill people. Your kid just did that all by themselves in your neglect. You know? Oh, don't get me started.
I don't know if anyone has seen this, but speaking of back to true crime, I don't know if you've seen what's happening in the Scott Peterson case.
I just heard about
LA
that.
Innocence
It comes
Project
up
has
once
taken up.
Yeah, it comes up once in a while. That and Casey Anthony, I'll hear stuff on, and I'm like, interesting.
Oh, I got words about Casey Anthony.
Those two,
I feel like some of this is kind of like for me, it's kind of like when people ask me to take a side in the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp thing, and I was like, I don't root for either side. I'd like to just both hold each other accountable. But everyone was like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "You got to pick a side." I'm like, that the media wants you to pick a side. I don't have to pick shit. I don't know these people. I'm not convinced by either one. They sound very terrible or very flawed. And yeah, Peterson, I don't know. Anthony, I don't know. All I know is they look very creepy with how they've been portrayed in the media. So I'm just like, I'm not going to touch it. I'll let the detectives figure it out. What's your guys' take?
I think they suck.
And his sister-in-law, not on the wife's side. This is his brother's wife. She's been trying forever to prove his innocence. I'm sorry, this guy is not innocent. He just is not. He has been trying and trying and trying and trying to prove his innocence.
It's kind of like Charles Manson.
Guilty.
I'm insane. You can't kill me. I'm like, oh, we could.
Right. Okay, but what if he wasn't guilty? Just for
okay. So let's just put all that aside. Yeah. Okay. Let's say they aren't, for argument's sake. Then you could make the argument, and I'm going to tread lightly on this. You could make the argument that they got just shitty representation, because I do feel like that plays into a lot of this stuff. Now,
I don't know. I think with Scott Peterson, the thing is that in order for you to convince me that he's innocent, I'm going to need something way better than this. Like, I'm going to need who actually really then murdered her. That's what I'm going to need in order to convince if he didn't do it, I want to know who did. Otherwise, I don't believe
that's a beyond valid point.
Yeah,
because I do feel like half the time, I mean, the closest I've done to any kind of legal representation in recent has been off the record. No, they did not pay me to rep them, but to get a traffic violation off my record. But I do feel like half the time they will pair you with someone. You're like, we're not really communicating properly. What's going on here? And I do feel like, shitty person or not, there do seem to be a lot of people who are like, did you guys even talk this over, what your defense was going to be? But I do agree also that sometimes I will feel like I'm hearing regurgitations of the same thing. I'm like, well, that's a lot. So in other words, you have no alibi. That's a lot of lucky coincidences. What's really going on here? This feels like a bad episode of Boston Legal. What are we doing here?
But it has happened in the past that people are exonerated because they do find out through DNA or whatever that they're innocent, and they spent however many years in jail because, like, all of the circumstantial evidence. I mean, there could have been a mountain of circumstantial evidence that said this person was guilty, and they still ended up not being guilty. So it happens.
No, that's true too. I do get annoyed when people speak too soon. I'm like, hold on, wait a second. They just got off, but let's.
Imagine being that guy, though, who's just going about his life,
You'll
right?
see people from either political side who will accuse the other doing bad things, but if it's one of their guys, they stand by their man, so to speak, and it's like, well, hold on. Your lack of double standards is also playing into this bias. So it is, like you say, you do want to take it with a grain of salt instead of just of the whole, guilty until proven, innocent, and vice versa. Is like, well, let's wait a while. Let's make sure for certain nothing's gonna hit us in the butt, 10 years down the road, and we're like, whoa, we believe that awful person's lies. But I do feel like, even with these statute of limitations, I am with most of these cases, I'm like, get that DNA test, get that, semen test, get that, all these other tests that need to happen to, instead of the, one side accusing the other of, something bad. It's like, well, if you interacted or wronged each other, let's see what's in your bloodstream, It can't be that hard, can it? To get a warrant for a DNA test?
Yeah. And what about the cases with the DNA that doesn't match anyone? Like
I would
JonBenet
love
Ramsey.
to hear more about those. Yeah.
it
I don't.
doesn't
Everyone's
match
uncomfortable.
they cannot figure out who this DNA belongs to.
Yeah,
And it's terrible
a
because
John
they
Doe.
may never.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just don't know. And it's,
And the media doesn't
you know,
like to talk
they
about
don't,
that. They want to lead
yeah.
you astray on clickbait or someone who they
Mhm.
can villainize, and it's like, well, hold on, now you're polluting it even more. It's like, let's see what's on the record, and let's actually get a beginning, middle, and end to this.
I think some of these
Yeah.
cases, though, even some of these huge cases, they know who is guilty of the crime, but they don't have the evidence to do anything about it. So, in
Right.
that aspect, they're never going to be solved. You know, it's not like more evidence is going to come to, it's unlikely, let's
No,
say.
that's a good point too. It is kind of almost like some of those kid shooters that were kind of a case every once in a while. Is like, who do you got to send? Now the DA's deal is to send someone to prison. So who do we send now? Do we send the parent to jail? Do we send some other enabler
Yeah.
or person who had intent to murder or destroy or injure and harm? It is. This gets into even more gray areas. It's like, so we're not punishing the guy or gal who did it, but we're punishing someone else who's a loose accomplice. It definitely gets even more confusing. It's like, and man, it's not getting any easier, I don't think. But you tell me.
Well, any child who murders, I to blame the parent, that's tough. You know,
I can
that's
understand
really
maybe
tough.
if they're verbally abusive or really neglectful or even brainwashing you into doing shitty things like shooting animals, and then it escalates to now you're shooting humans. But yeah, it's then there's other times
To
where
be,
it's perfectly nice person, but go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of abused kids out there that murders or mass murders, a
Yeah.
lot.
Mm-hmm.
So come on. I mean, there has to be something wrong to begin with.
Totally.
You know.
And
So,
even though we've introduced people to all this sociopathic stuff, I feel like everyone is still, especially these gun companies, keep saying, "Oh, it's a mental health issue." I'm like, no, that would be mental illness. But even then, you're encouraging people to buy guns and shoot whatever. So that's not. Something's got to be done about those
yeah.
ads as well. I do feel like there needs to be more safety meetings. There needs to be as many gun safety ads as there are, go buy a gun endorsed by a famous celebrity who's, cuckoo. It's like, I have nothing wrong with people who want to own a gun, but I would say the fear mongering causes even more rupturing before any of this escalates. Because if you have people who are bigoted or overprotective or just insecure, they're going to do whatever they can to excuse, hey, I shot someone in public who I just didn't like their face, or I had intent to kill, but I found a way to where I could claim, oh, they were on my property, or just something else. But that I'm going into a whole wormhole here.
Yeah.
There are so many other scenarios where I just look at it like, there was Zimmerman, that one businessman. I don't know if you ever heard about. Who did he shoot? Was it? Yeah, George Zimmerman. He shot Trayvon Martin.
Okay.
Yeah, and I thought that was a perfect example of privilege, where you just saw the oh shit look on his face, and you're like, this dude robbed you. Okay, yeah, that was wrong, but you hunted him down. You went all freaking dirty Harry on his ass. You're the murderer technically in this. And so many people, they did not want to talk about that. Some of these other latest shootings have been just so upsetting.
Honestly, it's difficult because, and if I say I were to carry a gun, have a permit to carry a gun.
Let's say in this scenario you are armed. Okay, sure. Let's go with that.
So even in my own home and breaks into I live in New York State, and someone breaks into my home and
Right.
I shoot them, I can still be in trouble. I can still
Bingo.
get charged for shooting.
Absolutely.
Entered my home. They can sue me if I don't. I do. The family is going to try to, even though you've entered my home, that's how it is here in New York State.
Oh, and like in Canada,
so
they
I
are
would be
very strict
terrified.
with gun laws too. So yeah, if they find any violation, if they find you shot this person but you hadn't updated your license, I mean, I work in security, and I have had several times had to so to speak, police the other security guards and say, I see you doing that. I am writing you up. Don't be a super cop. Do not harass an individual. You are here to report a problem, not to instigate or argue with people, because then that makes us all look bad. And the only thing right you have as a security guard is you can sue for being assaulted, just like a cop could, and probably win. That's it. You cannot instigate or threaten people or taser them, especially if your company has not endorsed that or enabled that. So guess what? They're not going to back you up in court. They're going to be like, hey, one of our guys here is screwy. Let's fire him. Or sue him for breach of contract. Then what? So yeah, no, it's very worrisome. And it opens up your eyes though too to just how so many people kind of want to have danger come to their door in some capacity. And it's like, well, if you keep pursuing this and you don't show proof that you filed a police report or you falsified evidence, then guess what? You're just as bad, if not worse, than whoever else tried to do a petty crime to you. So it's I would love to see people just talk more about this. I had to unfriend so many people on social media after the Kyle Rittenhouse thing because it was just so upsetting to me. I'm like, it's not self-defense if you went to another state with intent to kill. It's just like, but so many people are like, oh no, he's helping out his community. I'm like, he, again, like Zimmerman, he hunted down someone who he didn't like, and another person who was on the record as having a mental illness, and he just decided, I'm gonna shoot him. And he was enabled by some other cops who turned all these protests into riots. So it's like, people need to educate themselves about BLM instead of jumping on the back the blue or every protester's a terrorist bullshit. But yeah, Rittenhouse is definitely a perfect example of a privileged individual who decided he was untouchable and he could do whatever he wanted. Sorry, and this really took a turn. It's just very sad how we do have to educate each other on just so many other topics. And yeah, no, I'm not really sure what's next, but no, thank you for suggesting some of these other podcasts. They're already on my Podbean app. It kind of, I think as earlier as I thought of the dangers of the world, it would have been during our first Halloween. My parents were really the kings and queens of what any good parents should do, which is just check in, making sure the candy hadn't been tampered with. But I do feel like there are so many other dangers we just don't even know how to address. I got a great martial artist podcaster buddy who has a great book on how to fight bullies. And his motto is be the bigger shark. Because what do sharks prey on? They prey on the weak. And what he would do was kind of similar to what our folks would do. He would kind of check us out during lunch break, make sure, bullies aren't following one's kid to a library or a less occupied hallway. And I feel like a lot of these true crime and even history podcasts open up a lot of that same kind of dialogue, which is any unsecured area or place that's probably bound to explode sometime soon should probably be addressed sooner rather than later. I mean, don't get me started on Uvalde, how none of those precautions were updated for years. And, I feel like a lot of our safety regulations are out of whack. It's like, who do I call to instead of take the courage as a victim to, go and file a report or do something else that's very not guaranteed to have any, results, And I feel much like with PTSD, we're seeing a lot of people who are callous and they're like, why did this victim not come forth? It's like, well, it's humiliating, frankly. And if you don't think anything's going to be done about it, then you kind of don't speak up. It's like, yeah, I was touched inappropriately by a famous celebrity once upon a time, but no one would believe me. It's like, so I think Me Too was a big eye opener. I was really surprised at a lot of the people being tried by New York last November. I was like, whoa, a lot of people done fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that guy was a jerk. I knew he was an asshole. That guy? Whoa. Yikes. No idea. So yeah, we can find you guys on Twitter. Are you also on Instagram as well, or?
Yeah. So we're on TikTok. At
Sweet. What
dot
I had heard was
dot heard dot was Instagram at what I had heard, Facebook what I had heard was
Amazon Music,
Twitter.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we're on everything. All available podcast platforms wherever you can listen. And our Twitter is what I had heard W1. And then we have a website. It's wihhw.com. And that's where you can find the link to our merch.
Sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, wonderful. This was fun. Obviously, it got grim because how can it not? We're talking about, grim subject matter. But I was glad you were able to refer me to some stuff that's just, again, kind of more comedic narration mixed in with educating us about awful past of society. So no, that was good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys are welcome back anytime. We'll probably do something more lighter. We'll look into some other documentaries or entertainment we can cover, probably. Even music.
Okay.
You guys had some good picks, and we'll see what we can do. But
okay.
Yeah, no, you guys stay safe out there. I'll keep updating you on when this drops. It'll definitely be during a crime themed week. If there's anything more horrific than a horror movie, it's the true crimes of the world. So thank you all for being on here, and
thanks for having us
anytime. I was looking forward to it. I was like, I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but sure we do. Of course we do. We're going to just list off a few things and talk how we got into it, and hopefully we didn't overwhelm the listener. We got a lot of stuff for you to start.
We'll return after these messages.
The Jacked Up Review Show podcast is honored to be part of the Blind Knowledge Podcast Network. Join anytime, talk the talk, and enjoy yourselves. There's something enlightening for everyone with this crowd of cool cats. Check them out.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast recs and booty debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up